Welcome to week 4. This week we're going to talk about data manipulation and analysis with Pandas. So Pandas is another one of these core libraries as part of Python that allows you to do some really good and really elaborate things with data, especially manipulating data and data sets, large data sets, combining data sets, etc. So this is another one of those core building blocks that you have to learn. So the reading for this week is going to be Python for Data Analysis, Chapter 5, where they'll go into a lot of detail regarding this. And so for the assignment this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the third of the three that I had presented, the Jupyter Notebook approach. So much similar to Jupyter Lab, if I'm going to just do it just for an individual notebook, I could just launch here from your Anaconda Navigator. And that's going to bring up a basic Jupyter notebook. So you see it's very similar to the Jupyter Lab that we looked at last week, although this is much more streamlined just to that specific notebook that you're looking at. To upload, I'm going to upload a couple of files here. So let's go to week 4. And I'm going to upload my 2 notebooks. And very similar to the Jupyter Labs, if I click on that, it'll launch right into my notebook. This is, again, very similar to what you would see on a number of different platforms, such as Databricks, AWS, Azure, container environments, etc. Now, one other thing which I wanted to mention as part of the course, there's a handy little cheat sheet that's available, and I'll make that available out in the resource section. But for each week, it has the areas which we're covering. It actually has a basic cheat sheet that you can use. And this is put together by a variety of different folks, such as DataCamp, PyData is another one that has put some stuff together on this. But like if we were talking about the NumPy, here's like all the main things that you can do with NumPy and an actual example to show you. So as we talked about 1D, 2D, and 3D arrays, you can see it's got a visual picture that goes along with it. Now for this week, data wrangling and using Pandas, for instance, they've actually got a couple of really good ones here. So some of the more common things, how do you create a Pandas data frame? Here's an example of that. We talked about method chaining last week. So as you try to, if you need to chain a couple of things together, such as this is doing a melt, turnarounds and does a rename, and then turns around and does a query, all within one statement, you can do that chain of those different commands like that. Reshaping data, so gathering columns into a row, that's a melt. Doing a pivot, if you're going to pivot the data, turning rows into columns. If you're appending rows, that's a concatenate. And if you're appending columns, that's a concatenate. So it gives you, these are some of the main things that you'll do with your data. Quite often you're going to have to do subsets of data. So this is showing you some ways that you could take subsets. Like we've talked about head and tail before, but also just doing samples, random samples out of it, or selecting specific rows, you're able to do that. Select the largest, select the smallest, etc. Subsetting variables using the columns method is also possible, so rows or columns. Summarizing the data, showing you different ways that you can do a summarize, you can do a describe so you can get the view of it. Here's the min, the median, the max, the mean, the variance, the standard deviation, etc. So you can kind of see how you can get different statistical measurements off of your data. And then here is group bys and aggregations of data. For combining data sets, you can see here is a couple of examples of doing merges of the data too as well. So all of these are going to be very handy, especially as we get into your assignment. So again, I'll make these cheat sheets available to you. It's something you can find online very quickly, but I'll make this available to you in the resources so that you can look. And then as we get into future weeks, as we're talking about Matplotlib and we're talking about scikit-learn, you can see that it's also got some examples here, some cheat sheet examples that'll be very helpful to us in those weeks. So let's go back to the demonstration script. So for this one here, we want to talk about data manipulation and analysis in Python using Pandas and understanding Pandas data structures and basic functions. So in this example, I'm going to do 5 things. Show you a Pandas data frame by a specific column, sorting it in ascending order, removing duplicates from a Pandas data frame, filtering based on a condition, applying a user-defined function to a Pandas data frame, and then merging 2 Pandas data frames. So these are all very common things that you would do with your data. In my example here, the output's going to be this Python file that we've created, this notebook that we've created. And if I have any sample inputs or outputs, I'll include those too as well. And I'm going to give you the same grading criteria that I'm using here for this. So first of all, import Pandas as PD. That is the standard methodology for doing it. The standard notation for Pandas is PD. I would recommend you keep the same. In my example here, I'm going to load using a read CSV. And so here, using Python programming and analysis, this directory that I have, data.csv. Now realize it's on my P drive, and these double backslashes are required in order to do that read.csv. So then I'm going to sort this on the sort values using the sort values keyword. I'm going to sort this based off of column name, and then print out the sorted data frame. So here is my data frame in sorted order. And I can choose any one individual column if I wanted to use column 1, column 2, column 3, etc. Second question, remove duplicates from a Pandas data frame. So again, I go through the same process of doing the reload. The duplicated version of this, simply using the keyword drop duplicates does that for you. So if you do drop duplicates, it removes the duplicate records for you. Third, we're going to do a filter. So using a filter, I'm going to use the data frame and then subset it using the bracket notation to the data frame and the specific column name that I want, and where the values are over 50. Now, since I use column name, it's going to check all of the columns, not just one column. But if I put in there like column 1, column 2, column 3, it would only check column 1, column 2, or column 3. And then it's going to print out the final version of it. So again, this is a simple example of using filtered. Next, we're going to add a user-defined function. So in this case here, I'm just going to make a function that's going to take whatever the value passed into the parameter and multiply it by 2, or do it to the notation of 2. So then, in order to use that, you use the apply function. So if I use dataframe.apply, it's going to go through everything, and it's going to apply that function to every single thing that's in that existing data frame. So if I wanted to wipe through the entire data set and, let's say, increase it by 10%, I could do that simply by doing a very simple type function such as this. And then the final question is merging 2 data frames. So let's say I have 2 different data sets, data 1 and data 2. To merge those, I'm going to load this both into a data frame 1 and a data frame 2. Use the keyword of merge, data frame 1, data frame 2, and what column name that I merge it on. So I'm going to merge it on column name 1 because that's something that I have consistent in both data sets. And then the output is printed out, as you can see. So as you can quickly see, Pandas offers you the ability to do some pretty advanced things very simply, and you can even chain these together. So it's, in other words, if you wanted to combine data frames together and then turn around and do a deduplication on that, you could chain those 2 commands together, and you could get that type of result. So let's go over to the student submission for this week, your assignment. So this week for the assignment, you're going to have 5 questions. First of all, reading a CSV into a Pandas data frame, very similar to what you saw me do multiple times in the example. Display the first 5 rows of a Pandas data frame, and the second one is displaying the last 5 rows in a Pandas data frame. So remember back to the cheat sheet, I pointed out a point on the cheat sheet that said this may be something of value to you. That's where you would want to look at in order for that to do that. The next thing is going to be creating a new column in a Pandas data frame by combining two existing columns. Again, I would refer back to the cheat sheet. It gives you some examples of that. And then group a Pandas data frame by a specific column and calculate the mean of another column for each group. So that one could be a little bit tricky. You could do it within one command, but you don't have to do it in one command. You could do it in multiple commands if that's going to be easier for your learning. So again, the same grading criteria which we're going to have every week. The correctness, looking for the proper use, looking for efficiency. So in this case here, if you wanted to break it up and not chain the commands, that's okay. But we would not want to see a submission that would simply be like adding numbers together or doing something along those, or reading in the first 5 rows as individual calls to read, as opposed to doing the proper command in order to do that. So there's going to be a little bit of code efficiency, but not much in this assignment. Make sure your code is readable, and also make sure that you followed all of these instructions. That is week 4 for you. So if you have any questions, please reach out on the discussion forum, or reach out an email, or come to office hours and we'll answer those questions. Thank you.